What's up, guys? So, today we're going to try to make sourdough bread on a weeknight as a working mom, which sourdough is hard enough as it is, let alone trying to do something that takes 24 hours while you have to juggle family and kids. So, here what I have is my sourdough discard. I just pulled this out of the fridge and mix it up. We're going to go ahead and feed this here. Hi, Karma. Um, so whenever you have, I think a lot of people get confused on sourdough discard versus sourdough starter. So your discard is just starter that you have fed and it has bubbled and risen and gotten all bubbly and gooey and delicious and then has gone back down. So that discard you can refeed and use it in a recipe that requires starter, or you can use it in a recipe that requires discard. Or you can plainly just discard it and get rid of it or feed it to your animals, whatever you want to do. So I like to have a lot of discard on hand, mostly because I make a lot of discard pizza. It's really easy, it's delicious, but we're running low. So I'm going to go ahead and take this discard and we're going to feed it. I like to have, like I said, a lot on hand. So we're going to feed this 400 grams of flour and 400 grams of water so that we can use this as starter tomorrow morning to get a bread recipe together. Now, this bread recipe takes, for me, the way that I do it, 24 hours. So on day one, we're going to feed our starter or feed our discard, make it a starter, and we're going to sit it on the back of the counter and we're going to leave it sit all night long. I'm going to go to bed after, well, at this time it's 6 o'clock, so I'm going to make dinner and then get ready to go to bed. But it will be ready for tomorrow morning whenever I want to put together my bread recipe. So we're going to get this good and fed and give it a good stir and then just leave it sit on the counter. And that's all I have to do for day one. So sourdough takes a lot of time to do, but it is not difficult. You just have to kind of plan backwards. So if I know that I want to have sourdough bread tomorrow night for dinner, I have to kind of plan ahead and make sure that my dough is ready to be baked, let's say by 5 o'clock, so that it's ready by 5:45. Now I work until 5 o'clock, so we typically eat dinner later anyway. So this is a recipe that I can do while I'm at work. I get home, I separate it, I make my dinner, and then throw it in the oven, and it's ready to go. So this is the next morning, and we're going to throw together our recipe. Our dough or our starter is fed. It's all big and bubbly. So this is 6 o'clock in the morning, and I am just getting out of bed and not wanting to adult yet. So we're just going to throw this in the KitchenAid. It does not take a lot of effort. That's one thing that I really love about this recipe is it is super easy. Basically, we just throw all the ingredients into the KitchenAid, let it mix, and then go from there. I can go about my day. You know, when you're a working mom and you still want to make your food for your family from scratch, you kind of have to work around everyone's schedule. You know, the kids are in sports, we have the farm to feed, and I work until 5 p.m. So now that it's daylight savings time, you know, by the time that I pull in my driveway, it's dark. Which sometimes is a little bit daunting whenever you're trying to come home, make dinner, still get everything done. Everything that you're doing that's outside is in the dark. So it's nice to be able to come in the house and make some homemade bread and know that my family is eating good quality ingredients. So far what we have in here is we've added our butter, we've added our honey, we've added our salt, and right now we're adding the sourdough starter. This is water. I think I use like a tepid temperature water because you don't want it to be hot water because it'll kill the bacteria in your um, sourdough starter. So I'm just going to push that back to the back of the counter and put my dough hook on and let it mix. So as this is mixing, we are going to go ahead and start adding our flour. I like to add the flour while the KitchenAid is going, and then I can kind of judge a consistency. I always save the flour for last. That way, I don't want this to get too dry. I want it to stay a little bit, not sticky and definitely not wet. You'll kind of see the consistency right here is about where we want it. It kind of sticks to your fingers, but not a lot because I have the small KitchenAid, so I like to be able to pull this out, and we're going to flip this out on the counter and add a little bit more flour, and then go ahead and knead it and make sure all of the ingredients are incorporated. I know with my KitchenAid, sometimes down in the bottom, you'll get like a little bit left of remnants of something. And we don't want any of that. I want everything to be completely incorporated. So we're going to knead this just until everything is completely mixed together. We're not going, above and beyond. It's already been kneaded in the KitchenAid. And see, I push that flour over to the side because I don't want this to be any more dry than what it already is. You can see how it's kind of sticking to the counter a little bit. That's perfect. That's right where we want it. I'm going to slap this back in this bowl. I'm going to cover this with a wet tea towel so that the top doesn't dry, and we're going to leave it sit. So then whenever I get home from work, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out of the bowl. It definitely is a little bit sticky. But once you kind of get a good start on it, which you can't see because my, camera operations are not grand yet. We're working on it, I promise. And then you just kind of let it pull itself away from the edges of the bowl and out on the counter. I didn't get on camera me splitting this into 2 sections, but you just divide it in half. That's it. And then for the first one, I'm just making a regular loaf. So I'm just going to, there's no flour on the counter here. I'm just letting the tackiness of the dough against the counter pull that top tight. So it'll give it a good smooth crust is what I'm looking for here. And I realized I forgot to butter my loaf pans. Hold on. So I use Pampered Chef stoneware, but I do like to line it with butter because for some reason it comes out way better. And I do pull it out of my stoneware immediately whenever it gets out of the oven. You'll be able to see that here in just a few minutes. But I butter the crap out of the inside of my stoneware, and then I will end up putting my loaf back inside. That little scraper that I use is from Pampered Chef also. I love Pampered Chef stuff. So this next one, I'm trying something new for the first time, and I've never done this before. I don't know if it takes any special techniques or, added or subtracted ingredients, but I really just wanted to try a cheddar jalapeno bread for my husband, and man, oh man, wait till you see it. It turns out really well. I think I would do the chunks of cheese just a little bit smaller, but this ends up turning out phenomenally. And all I'm going to do with this is I'm just putting the pieces and parts of cheese and jalapenos on top of this, and then I'm going to kind of like roll it up like a cinnamon roll, and then just pull it tight like I did with the regular bread. the recipe. There's nothing different for this. I just added the ingredients that I wanted on top of it. I've heard you can do this with so many different things. Cinnamon and sugar, if you've never put cinnamon and sugar in something, it will definitely make your dough a little bit more wet. So that's a challenge that we may try to deal with because cinnamon raisin bread would be delicious. So I'm just going to pull this tight to give it that good crust top. And forgot to get my loaf pan, forgot to butter it. So we're going to go ahead and butter this loaf pan. Listen, nobody's perfect here. We kind of wing it as we go along because, one, life's too difficult to try and be perfect. I don't know how some people do it. I mean, this is sourdough for the love. So we are buttered loaf pan. We're going to stick that in. And then we are going to, oh yeah, I kind of pinched that. The cheese and jalapenos really wanted to come through the top of that. We're going to put a wet tea towel over it again. And we're going to let this rise for 1 to 2 hours. In this case, we did 2 hours because my house is pretty cold. I would have liked this to rise a little bit more, but at this point, it's 8 o'clock. I really want to get this in the oven because it takes 45 minutes to bake and it has to cool, and I'd like to get to bed at a decent time. So we're going to throw these in the oven. Oh, here I finally figured out how to get the yellow hint off my camera because realistically, I don't know how to work this thing. I'm just winging it. Here we are, almost 9 p.m. Mama's in her slippers and her sweatshirt, ready to go to bed. But look at that bread. Oh man, that stuff looks so good. If you could even just get a hint of what it tastes like compared to what it looks like. So, like I said, I do try to pull this. Oh, look at that cheese. It's delicious. So I flip these out of the loaf pans immediately after I get them out of the oven. And with that butter on there, it makes it so much simpler to flip those out. And then I stick them on my cooling rack and I let them cool completely before you cut into them because your bread is still cooking while it's cooling. If you cut into your loaf of bread before it cools, it'll be all gummy. The rest of your loaf will be all gummy, and I mean that first piece gonna be delicious, but the rest of it is gonna be all gummy and you will not love it. Okay, so while these are still hot, I'm gonna take a cold stick of butter and rub them over the top. That gives your bread like that caramelized kind of color and taste and flavor, and it's just the added touch that you really, really need. And I do this while it's still warm and it's all melty. It's like the icing on the cake. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to cut into this cheddar one. And look at the inside of that. And man, oh man, this stuff was delicious. I hope you guys give it a try. Thank you for learning with us. We'll see you next time.